Hey everybody, this is Robert here together with Dolf Koch. He's an old friend of mine and he's also the initiator and also the designer for Koch Amps. And you may or may not know them, but you will because we are super enthusiastic about the brand. And we're going to talk a little bit about the role of Dolf and also about the amp line, about the attenuators and about the pedals. So stay tuned here and we're going to give you a good insight on everything that is Dolf and everything that is Dolf Koch. Welcome, Dolf.
Well, thank you, Rob.
Yeah, of course we're both Dutch, but
Yes.
we're speaking English because, a larger reach, etc., etc. So we want to give a little insight into who you are, how you started, and what you're making and what you're designing.
Yes.
Because the amps are amazing. I mean, I've been playing them a long time.
Yes.
I was your first dealer, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the KV50,
Yes.
for people who know the history of the brand. And after that came the KV50. Then you see that here. That's
KC.
KC50. Did I say that?
Koch combo.
Yeah,
KC50.
So do we say Koch or Koch or Koch?
Koch.
Yeah.
We say Koch.
Yeah, we say Koch. So get used to it.
Yeah.
And these amps were already amazing, but everything developed. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So tell us about your history. When did you start?
I started, if I go back to my youth, I've made my first amp in around when I was 20. So that's around...
So that's 10 years ago.
That's 5 years ago.
No, seriously.
I did a technical school and I learned a lot about transistors and tubes and stuff. And I built my first amp, which was called the DK1, the Dolf Koch 1,
yeah. Okay.
which was a full transistor
So
amp.
what year was that?
That was 70, around.
Okay, around
Yes.
70, yeah. So that's a very long time ago. We joined you, I think, early 90s maybe? Or,
I
94
started
maybe?
officially in 89, but my first amp came in 91, I think.
Yeah, I think
It
92,
was the
93,
KV50.
maybe around that time. And most people
Yes.
weren't born then yet, because we're old.
I started with built-in preamps for electric guitars.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
That was my first product.
Yeah, what
yes.
was that? What were those called again?
The GPA.
Yeah, GPA. We built them into strats to boost them, etc.
Exactly. You could
I
boost.
forgot about that altogether.
You didn't have kind of overdrive channels on amps, so you had to overdrive the
Boost.
preamp with a boost on your guitar.
Yeah.
Okay.
That totally disappeared, right? This whole thing. Guitar
You
preamp.
had active guitars, and it was very popular, And,
EMGs.
But now we're all back to the old passive guitar. Yes.
Not a lot of people know you because you prefer to stay in the background, but you know a lot about amps, and your amps have always been somewhat different than, let's say, the mainstream, let's say Fenders or Marshalls or whatever.
Yes.
So you always have a little tweak. We'll go into that a little later. But is that because you think things can be improved, or how did you get to tweak all these amps?
Yeah, improved or extended with more possibilities, because making music is something you need a tool to do that.
Yeah.
And the more possibilities you have, the wider your range of musical possibilities will be.
Am I correct in thinking that the twin tone was your first really big hit?
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
the twin tone, then of course classic tone.
Classic
which
tone.
was more like let's say an old Fender style.
Yes, but the biggest hit came after that. That was the studio tone.
Oh yeah, okay.
A small 20 watt.
Which is still in production, by the way.
We still do that.
Yeah.
The twin tone also.
I think it's one of the most complete small amps.
Yes,
it's 20 watts, right?
20 watts, two EL84s.
Yeah.
You've got recording out with all kind of possibilities to simulate the speaker cabinet, to simulate the position of the microphone.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it offers more possibilities, let's say, than a deluxe reverb.
Yes.
And it's also cheaper. It's made in Holland, so it's quality.
Yes.
I mean, we'd like to think so anyway.
Yes, it's
Yeah, it's quality.
for me that's very important. Build quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I heard one of these studio tones on stage, and it really, I mean, you could think, okay, 20 watts is maybe not enough, but it is really enough.
It is.
To play with a drummer.
Especially nowadays, you know, with all the super PA systems.
Yeah.
And I personally, I still play in 2 bands, and I play with an amplifier with has power control, with its Jupiter.
Yeah.
I always turn it back to between 5 and 10 watts, and then that's enough.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to ask you is that the early amps always had a satellite version. So
Yes.
let's say to make it stereo.
Yes.
Which I loved a lot. So KV and KC50 both had a satellite option.
Yes.
So basically the same combo, for instance, with just the power amp built in, and you could just make a stereo. I don't see that anymore. Is that something that you...
Well, that's the market doesn't require it anymore.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
That was a fashion thing. You know, everybody wanted stereo. Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, ooh, you know.
I'm just old school.
But
because
on
I still love
stage,
it.
it doesn't work
Yeah.
because there's a system here and a system there. You only experience right if you're in the middle.
Yeah.
But if you're at one speaker system, it's like a tremolo. It goes on and off. You know.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Okay, so let's go into the more new amps.
Yes.
As I said, your amps always have special features that surprise a lot of people because they don't know them, or it's also because you don't cut back on parts, right? Because I see, for instance, on the Greg, which is we'll talk about that later in a separate video. It has a lot of features that actually are expensive to make, like the tremolo, like the overdrive system that you what is it, OTS?
OTS,
yeah.
Output tube saturation.
Yeah, so we won't go into that because it's too technical, but we'll do that in a separate video. But it just shows to me that Dolf doesn't cut back to just make more profit like a lot of other companies do. He builds quality stuff, so that's something we should keep in mind. Something that really went over the top in development was the Supernova.
Exactly, yes.
There's 1 million knobs on it.
Not so much. It had 5 channels.
5 channels,
yes. And it was all MIDI controllable.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of tonal options which you could do, mid boost or high boost or presence or whatever, speaker damping, everything.
Everything was there, yeah. And it had sort of 2 control strips, right?
Yeah, 2 strips, yes.
So it was like really something like a UFO. Really, it sounded great, but it was so complicated that a lot of people didn't understand it. But still, it was sold quite well, no?
Yes, it was a question from the market. All these possibilities, and for Koch to have a flagship.
Yeah.
And that was the thought behind it.
Yeah,
to
was
make a flagship which could do everything.
It was like an aircraft carrier, so
big.
So
we sold a lot of them in America,
and
Japan, and those were, and in Germany. Those were the 3 biggest markets for it.
Okay. So I have some more questions. You also make very affordable attenuators.
Yes.
But we find that a lot of people do not understand the concept of 4 ohms, 8 ohms, 16 ohms. Why would you have different attenuators? And could you tell us a little bit more about this? Because it's very affordable. It works without power supply if you want. You just have a power supply if you want to activate the fan which is inside. Could you tell us a little more about this? And why would you have different ones for different...
Well, first of all, because it's a network, you step down the voltage, so the power of the output power of the amp in stages, and all these I work with resistors. They give a certain impedance, and if you add them up, and to go to a different impedance, you have to replace all these resistors for different values.
Yeah, okay.
So that's, you cannot make all the resistors switchable.
Yeah, because somebody, maybe it's not correct, but somebody once told me that it's not so much the amp that has a impedance, but more the speaker, and the amp gives a certain amount of power combined with the impedance of the speaker. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yes.
Well, maybe it's too technical now, but anyway, you have to take a look at your amp and then see what kind of outputs it has.
Well,
right?
most tube amps have 4, 8, and 16 ohm outputs. So, like you say, it comes back to the speaker.
Yeah.
If you have an 8 ohm cabinet or two 16 ohms or whatever.
So you take a look at your speaker, then you decide which one you want. Okay.
Exactly.
So
yes.
these attenuators are really good. We use them in the store, and they are very affordable because most of these brands are like super expensive, up to €2,000. But this is very affordable. So check that out. So that's a. Do you want to say anything else about this?
A lot of people hate the word resistive because they think that if you only make a resistive ladder network, step-down network, you damp the speaker.
Okay.
But I take care that the speaker damping of a tube amp stays the same in every output you choose.
Okay, so you get the same response, you mean?
You get the same
frequency
reaction of the speaker, so the sound doesn't change.
That's exactly what we want, yeah?
That's what we want.
We want to take care of the neighbors and not, so the sound should stay the same.
It's resistive, but in a different way.
Okay, so you think it's very small and but it's complete. I mean, it has line outs and all these things.
Yes, 120 watts.
Yeah, so you can really go to town.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question I have is Greg Koch, as he says, or Greg Koch, whatever you want. He's one of our favorite guitar players. I mean, of course, you know him from the internet, or you should know, and otherwise look him up. He's one of your most famous endorsers.
Yes. Yes.
This guy is, besides really funny, I mean, I love him. But he's also a super guitar player. So how did you get to know him? And
that went through my wife.
Oh?
Yes, in Germany at Musikmesse. She went to, he was demonstrating for Fender.
Okay.
And she went around, she walked around and she came in the venue where he was playing. And she was like, wow, he's a good guitar player.
Yeah,
and
amazing,
she went, after the show, she went backstage.
Was it a coincidence, the names? Or?
Yeah, because he was Koch, Greg Koch, and I am the wife of Dolf Koch. Ah, Conchita, I love that name, he said. Yeah. And he made jokes about it.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy.
Why don't you play Koch Amps, she said.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Are there Koch Amps? Wow,
but yes. I understood that he knew the twin tone already.
That came later.
Okay.
He came to our booth in Germany, and we changed caps and we talked a lot. And he played the twin tone. It was like, wow, that's a great amp. And well, from one came another.
Yeah.
And we started talking about amps and stuff. And we found out that he wasn't very happy with Fender, because Fender is a corporate company. They talk about money,
profit margins,
and more money. He was sent out to demonstrate the amps, but they only asked him about money, which he's a guitar player, he doesn't know a lot about money. Yeah. So we started talking, and can you make this and can you make that? And I said, yes, no problem. And can you make an amp for me?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, no problem. Let's communicate, and that's how it started.
Yeah, he actually has two models. I would say the current flagship would be the Greg.
The Greg, yes.
Because that also has two, control faces.
Yes.
We'll go into that in a separate video, but it's a very, very, very complete amp. It has a special vibrato tremolo unit, which is also derived, as I understood, from an older amp, like a vintage amp, as you said.
It's derived from a very old Fender circuit.
I didn't want to mention Fender,
pre-CBS Fender circuit, which he loved so much, and which he asked me, could you build it in the amp?
A super nice reverb, which is also controllable, also the tone, etc.
Yes.
So it's actually the most complete amp you have right now.
Yes.
But there's also a smaller one. I'm not sure if you can see this. This is the little Gristle. Because Gristle is a term that Greg Koch uses all the time. And it's basically a vintage amp, and it has only 4 controls, which is enough for most guitar players, and it sounds amazing. So if you're looking for a, let's say this is only 12 watts, so if you're looking for a small amp like a Princeton or something like that, also take a look at this, because it's a bigger amp than most 12 watt amps, and the bigger cabinet also gives it more room, more low end, I would say.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And more punch also.
Yeah, more punch, more of everything actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So 2 versions. This is the tweed one. That's the grey tweed, which is very distinguished. I would go for that. Distinguished. Anyway, but could you tell us a little bit about that? Because he wanted something portable, probably for his gigs. That he.
Yes, that's one thing, and the other thing is he wanted an amp with less knobs.
Yeah.
And that's why there are controls like instead of gain, we use the word more.
Yeah. It's nice. It has humor, like he has.
Yes.
You know, a guy I know from 65 amps, Dan Boole. He's told me once that if your amp has more than 6 knobs, you're one of them.
Yes,
it's very funny.
This one has 4.
So we'll do separate videos about that, but you have to really try them out because I love them. Okay, another item I wanted to talk to you about is tubes, because it's harder and harder, as I understand, because we can't get tubes from Russia anymore.
No, but they were crap.
Anyway,
well, not all of them, but they were the quality was very variable.
Yeah. Dolf has very strong opinions, but you know that already. But I believe him. Then there's China. Then there's Czech Republic.
China. There was a huge factory, the Shuguang factory, which is burned.
Burned down. Okay.
It burned down. Yes.
Wow.
And so those were the most popular tubes used by almost everybody. And they're not available anymore.
But they're not rebuilding, or?
There were plans. I don't know a lot about it. There were plans, but there are still plans. And and it was in the middle of a town, and they don't want it back in that place. So it had to move.
But
I don't know a lot about
Czech Republic, of course. They make
no,
tubes?
Slovakia.
Slovakia.
That's the JJ factory.
Okay.
There's one, and there's one in China also. And those are the 2 suppliers that are
for everybody.
For everybody. So it's availability and price, which is making it hard to build tube.
But I also heard once from somebody who knows about these things. He said that because I asked him why are the tubes made, let's say in the 40s, 50s, and 60s so much better usually than what they make now, and he said that the machinery they use to make tubes is still, in a lot of cases, the old machinery.
It's the old machine,
which has a lot more tolerance now. So they're not like super vacuum sometimes because the machines are old and they wobble a little. Maybe I'm not sure what it is. But is there nobody who makes new machinery or? Because no, I mean it's all
no, because the music market is the only market which is interested.
But also hi-fi, no? Hi-fi makes
high-end audio, yes, but those numbers are too low. The numbers are just too low. So it's dying
together with us, maybe.
It's
old men.
You need a lot of time to build it. So it's not for Philips and others. It's not interesting anymore.
So, but you can still get your tubes, as I understand, because you're making them.
Yes.
So there is then, of course, the twin tone, the studio tone. We have the Greg, we have the little Gristle.
Yes.
And there's another one. What is it? Not the Jupiter, but the Ventura.
The Ventura.
That's also you see them often with a red and white Tolex, but you can get different versions anyway. What is so different about that compared to, let's say?
Well, it's a 6V6 amp, and the 6V6 is
more like a
American replacement for the EL84.
Yeah, like a Fender Deluxe reverb.
Like a Fender Deluxe. deluxe reverb, and that was always my favorite tube.
I think we mentioned Fender about 20 times, but we love Fender. And then
I love Leo.
And Leo was your one.
It was my
inspiration.
My big, inspiration.
Yeah. So and there is the hybrid line. So we have the full tube, which we love, and there is the hybrid line, which is, for instance, this Jupiter.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. Most manufacturers and people think if they hear the word hybrid about solid-state preamp, tube power amp, or vice versa. But I do it different, as always. I use a tube in the preamp and I use a tube in the power amp. And both those tubes take care of the harmonic response of the amp.
So the actual sound.
They make the coloring.
The coloring, the warmth, the dynamics.
Yeah, you have to bring up the guitar signal to a certain level.
So the voltage.
To a certain voltage. Therefore, I use an FET or transistor, whatever you'll call it, and then it goes to the tube stage and makes the distortion, coloring, whatever. Same with the power amp. I use a tube to bring up the signal, and then I use MOSFETs to drive the speaker.
So you could say it's the best of both worlds. You have
it's the best of both worlds.
The tube sound and the weight of, let's say, a transistor amp.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's cool. I heard there's also something in the works that is full, so without any tubes, with full MOSFET or FET?
Yes.
FET?
It's not on the market yet. We have plans to release it in next year.
Yeah.
There is a working prototype.
Yeah, I saw a picture.
Yes.
Sneak peek. But what is important is that you should not compare this new FET or FET amp with the ones you know from the 70s and the 80s, because the technology has improved so much that the sound is much more like a tube amp, so much warmer, as I understood from you, than, for instance, like an old lab amp or like a whatever sessionette that you had. In
those were transistor based, and my amp is fully FET based, which is a different thing than a transistor.
Okay, and is it higher quality or is it warmer sounding or what is it?
Yes, it's a different character. Like a tube is different from a transistor.
Okay.
An FET is like a tube, but then this big.
Okay.
And well, I can't reveal any more about the technique.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But what is important for a lot of people is that it's very affordable, as I understand.
Yes.
It's lightweight.
It's we have a 40 watt amp, which is under 2.5 kilograms.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
You can throw it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, of course, it has more or less the same sound, like 95% of a tube amp, you would say.
Yes, it's fully analog. I don't use digital amp, power amp like a Class D amp. I don't use that. It's fully analog.
Okay. And what is the advantage? Is it just sound, the advantage? Let's say analog versus digital, or not?
Yes. I am not a fan of digital.
No.
Sounds.
So
you chop. You have the sine wave, and you chop it into pieces. You make ones and zero out of it, and then you transform it back to a sine wave.
Okay. So the last question I have for you is that we know your, let's say, tube pedals, like from the pedal tone from way back. But now you've recently introduced the Super Lead, which is of course more compact.
Yes.
It looks much better, in my opinion. And now there's a version 2 coming, as I understood. Because normally a real tube pedal, so it's like an overdrive but with the real tube in it. So the same sort of story that we just told about the Ventura series. So you have the dynamics of a real tube, but it's much more affordable than a tube amp, of course. So you can use it as a preamp, and the version 2 works on DC, which is normally let's say a real tube overdrive uses AC, so you have to have a separate 12 volt power supply, and that doesn't match with the multi power supplies that you have on your pedal board. So you always have to have this this really big extra power supply. But this new one sounds better, as I understand it. I haven't heard it yet, and it has a 9-volt DC. So how is that possible that you came up with that? Because they always said it's impossible to have a 9-volt DC real tube.
Well,
preamp.
it is possible,
Yeah,
technically.
obviously. But what do you?
I've been studying a lot to realize it, because a tube works on a high voltage, 250, 300 volt, and there are companies who lower that voltage and still sell it as a tube thing, but that's not, that's not
But
the
it doesn't
real
sound
thing
the
to
same,
do it.
or?
No, that sounds different.
It's like cooking
Super
a
Lead-
dish on small fire or something. is it?
Yes, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. My Super Lead has the 250 volt for the tube,
Yeah.
but the problem is to go from low voltage to that high voltage, you need a transformer to do that. That's the old-fashioned way. You go from 12 volts and step it up to 200 volt, whatever. But with a DC input, you cannot do that with a transformer. So you have to find a way to change the 9-volt DC into AC and then step it up. That's basically what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
But nobody does that, so it must
No.
be, let's say, a difficult solution, or let's say it needs more work than just
yes,
saying, okay, we'll put a battery in it and that's it.
It needs a lot of research. You
Yeah.
can do it again digitally. You can step it up, but then you
But
have.
we don't like digits.
Well, I like the digital power supply, no problem.
Yeah.
But they always work with very high switching frequency, and in small pedal, you get that frequency through your guitar sound
Ah, okay.
that leaks,
Yeah, okay.
and you cannot separate that 100%. So
You see that Dolf is very enthusiastic when it comes to technical details, but we understand it. So it's affordable. You can use any clean amp that you have, and it will sound like a tube amp. Because I've tried the old version.
Yes.
And it looks great. It's purple. It's really
It's got
nice.
a balanced DI output, so you don't need this. You can go directly to your PA system.
Well, it's better to buy this as well, but that's a separate story.
Yeah, sure. But in case you're in a theater or whatever, and you cannot you use your amp, you can just use.
But it's these little things like this DI, balanced DI, and all these nice features that like the contour switches and all these nice little details that make Koch stand out a little more than just any amp brand, let's say. So those were all my questions. Well, thank you for being here. It was
thank you,
pleasure.
Rob, very much.
And there's only one thing to say: come to Max Guitar, test all this stuff out because it's great.
Yes, do that.